Hey beautiful souls, where are you watching from today? Drop your city in the comments because you're going to need each other for what I'm about to share with you. My name is Margaret Thornfield, and 3 weeks ago, my world exploded in ways I never thought possible. I'm sitting here in my empty kitchen in Akron, Ohio, staring at the same spot where I found my daughter-in-law's wedding ring abandoned on the counter like a discarded promise. But that's not even the worst part. The baby is crying upstairs. My grandson Michael, at least, that's what I thought he was. My son Derek hasn't spoken to me in 2 days. And the woman I welcomed into my home for 8 years, the woman I loved like my own daughter, has vanished without a trace, leaving behind secrets that could destroy what's left of my family. You want to know how I ended up here? Let me take you back to that morning when my life shattered into a million pieces. I woke up to silence. Dead silence. If you've ever lived with a newborn, you know that silence isn't golden, it's terrifying. Baby Michael had been crying every morning at 5 a.m. sharp for 3 weeks straight. But that Tuesday morning in February, nothing. I padded downstairs in my slippers, and that's when I saw it. Valerie's gold wedding band sitting on my granite countertop like an accusation. The same ring Derek had saved for months to buy, working double shifts at the steel plant, skipping meals to afford something worthy of the woman he claimed was his soulmate. Derek? I called out, my voice cracking in the morning stillness. I found my son slumped at the kitchen table, holding a crumpled piece of paper, his face gray as ash. When he looked up at me, I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen since his father died, complete and utter devastation. She's gone, Mom. His voice was barely a whisper. Valerie's gone. The note was brief, written in her careful handwriting on lined paper torn from a notebook. Derek, I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore. The baby is yours, I swear on my life, but I can't stay. They've found me. If I don't disappear, we'll all be in danger. Please don't look for me. Forget I ever existed. Take care of Michael. Give him the life I never could. V. Who found her? I asked, but Derek just shook his head, lost. That's when baby Michael started crying upstairs, and the sound cut through me like a knife. This innocent child, not even a month old, was now motherless. His father was broken. And I was the only thing standing between this family and complete collapse. Let me tell you something about my daughter-in-law, or the woman I thought was my daughter-in-law. Valerie had always been mysterious. In 8 years of living under my roof, she'd never once mentioned friends from before she met Derek. No childhood stories. No family photos. When I'd ask about her parents, she'd get this haunted look and claim they died in a car accident when she was 18. I should have pushed harder. I should have asked more questions. But Derek was so happy, and after losing his father in that construction accident, happiness had been such a rare visitor in our home. Now I understand why she never talked about her past. The woman who married my son, who lived in my house, who I cooked for and worried about and loved like my own blood, she wasn't who she claimed to be at all. The police came that morning. Detective Patricia Morrison, a no-nonsense woman with kind eyes and graying hair, took our statement. She listened patiently as Derek stammered through the details, his voice breaking every few words. Has Valerie ever mentioned being in any kind of trouble? Detective Morrison asked. Witness protection? Legal issues? Maybe an abusive ex-boyfriend? Derek shook his head helplessly. She never told me anything. Said her past was too painful to discuss. That should have been our first red flag. But love makes you blind, doesn't it? It makes you accept things you should question, ignore warning signs that flash like neon. Detective Morrison's preliminary investigation revealed what we should have discovered years ago. The Social Security number Valerie had been using belonged to a girl who died in Nevada 20 years ago. Her driver's license was expertly forged. Even their marriage certificate contained falsified information. I'm sorry, Detective Morrison told us 3 days later, but the woman you knew as Valerie Martinez doesn't exist. At least not legally. Derek didn't eat for a week after that. He'd just sit in baby Michael's nursery, holding his son and staring at nothing. The man who used to work 12-hour shifts without complaint couldn't even bring himself to go back to the steel plant. And me? I was trying to hold together a family that was falling apart at the seams, while caring for a newborn and wondering how I'd missed the signs that the woman I'd welcomed into my home was living a complete lie. But here's where the story gets even more twisted, and I need you to stick with me because what I discovered next changed everything I thought I knew about family, loyalty, and the lengths people will go to protect the ones they love. 2 weeks after Valerie disappeared, Detective Morrison came back to my house with a manila envelope and an expression I couldn't read. Mrs. Thornfield, she said, settling into my living room chair, I took the liberty of running some DNA tests. Given the circumstances, and the fact that this baby was abandoned, I wanted to establish paternity for legal purposes. Derek perked up for the first time in days. Good. I mean, I know Michael is mine, but it'll be good to have it official. Detective Morrison opened the envelope slowly. That's just it, Derek. The test shows that Michael isn't your biological son. The room started spinning. Derek's face went white, then red, then white again. That's impossible, he whispered. I'm afraid it's not, Detective Morrison continued gently. But here's the strange part. The DNA shows that Michael is still genetically related to your family, Mrs. Thornfield. Just not through Derek. My heart stopped. What do you mean? The markers suggest he's your grandson, but through a daughter, not a son. The world tilted on its axis. Because 34 years ago, I'd made a mistake that I'd buried so deep I'd almost convinced myself it never happened. A brief affair while my husband was working overseas. A pregnancy I'd hidden. A daughter I'd given away to save my marriage. A daughter I'd never named, never held, never spoken of. If this story is hitting you the way I think it will, you're going to want to subscribe because what happens next will blow your mind. The truth about who Valerie really was, and how she found us, is more shocking than anything you could imagine. But first, I had to face the impossible reality staring me in the face, the woman who had married my son, who had lived in my house for 8 years, who had just given birth to my great-grandson. Was my own daughter. The daughter I'd abandoned 34 years ago had somehow found her way back to me, married her own half-brother, and been living under my nose this entire time. And now she was gone again, running from people who wanted to hurt her, carrying secrets that could destroy what was left of our shattered family. The question that haunted me as I held baby Michael that night wasn't just where my daughter had gone. It was whether she'd known the truth all along. I spent the next 3 days in a fog, trying to process the impossible. Every time I looked at baby Michael, I saw features that made sense now, the stubborn chin that reminded me of my own father, the way he gripped my finger with a strength that seemed familiar. This child was my grandson and my great-grandson, the product of a relationship that should never have existed. Derek had retreated completely, barely speaking, barely eating. He'd hold Michael mechanically, going through the motions of fatherhood while his world crumbled around him. The man I'd raised to be strong, to weather any storm, was disappearing before my eyes. I was losing both my children, the son I'd raised and the daughter I'd given away. That's when she showed up. Thursday morning, I was feeding Michael his bottle when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw a woman about my age with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun and the kind of eyes that had seen too much. She wore a simple black coat and carried a leather briefcase. "Mrs. Thornfield?" "My name is Helen Santos. I'm a private investigator, and I think I can help you find your daughter." My heart nearly stopped. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Margaret," she said gently, "I know about Linda." I opened that door faster than I'd ever opened anything in my life. Helen Santos wasn't just any private investigator. As she sat in my living room, holding a cup of coffee with steady hands, she explained that she'd been tracking the woman I knew as Valerie for over 2 years. "I was hired by a man named Vincent Matthews," she said, pulling out a file thick with documents and photographs. "Vincent is Linda's adoptive father. The people who took her in after you gave her up." The room spun. "She's been looking for me?" "Not exactly." Helen's expression grew complicated. "Vincent hired me because his daughter had disappeared. Linda, your Linda, witnessed something 15 years ago that put her in danger. She's been running ever since, using different identities, different names. Vincent wanted to find her, to help her, but she was always one step ahead." She spread photographs across my coffee table. Pictures of Valerie, Linda, through the years. Different hair colors, different styles, but unmistakably her. The timeline showed her journey from Chicago to Detroit, then Cleveland, finally landing here in Akron 8 years ago. "Vincent is dying," Helen continued quietly. "Pancreatic cancer. He has maybe 6 months left. Before he goes, he wants to see his daughter one more time. He wants to tell her that it's safe to come home." "Safe?" I grabbed her arm. "The note she left said they found her." "Who are they?" Helen's jaw tightened. "Marcus Volkov. He runs a money laundering operation through construction companies in Chicago. 15 years ago, Linda was working as a bookkeeper for one of his front businesses. She stumbled onto evidence of murders, drug trafficking, human trafficking, enough to put Volkov and his entire organization away for life. The pieces clicked into place. The nightmares. The paranoia. The way Valerie would freeze whenever certain cars drove past our house. She tried to go to the FBI, Helen continued, but Volkov has people everywhere. Cops, federal agents, judges. Linda barely escaped Chicago alive, and she's been running ever since." Derek appeared in the doorway, drawn by voices. His eyes were red-rimmed, his shirt wrinkled from sleeping in the chair beside Michael's crib. "Who's this?" he asked, his voice hoarse. I looked at my son, this broken man who just discovered his wife was a lie and his child wasn't his own. "Derek, sit down. There's more." Helen studied Derek with professional assessment. "You're the half-brother," she said, not unkindly. Derek flinched like he'd been slapped. "Jesus Christ. Did she know?" I asked Helen. "When Linda married Derek, did she know who he was?" "Who I was?" Helen opened another folder, this one filled with birth certificates, adoption records, and what looked like years of investigation notes. Vincent hired the best private investigators money could buy to find Linda after she disappeared. In the process, he learned everything about her background, including the identity of her birth mother. Helen met my eyes. He knew she'd found you, Margaret. He's known for 8 years that his daughter was living with her biological family. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. And he didn't tell me? Didn't warn me? He wanted to, Helen said quickly. But Linda made him promise. She said she'd disappear forever if he interfered. Vincent thought as long as she was safe, as long as she was happy. Happy? Derek's voice cracked. She married her own brother. She had a baby with, he couldn't finish the sentence. Helen's expression softened. Derek, I don't think Linda knew. Not at first. My investigation suggests she found your mother purely by accident. She was looking for a place to hide, saw the name Thornfield in a rental listing, and thought it was just coincidence. It wasn't until after she'd been here for months, maybe years, that she realized who Margaret really was. Then why did she stay? I whispered. Because she'd already fallen in love, Helen said simply. With Derek. With you. With the family she'd never had. And by then, it was too late to leave without destroying everyone she'd grown to love. The room fell silent except for Michael's soft breathing from his carrier. This innocent child, the product of impossible circumstances, sleeping peacefully while his world was dissected around him. Helen leaned forward, her voice taking on urgency. Here's what you need to understand. Vincent Matthews isn't just some grieving father. He's rich, Margaret. Wealthy enough to hire armies of investigators, to buy protection, to make problems disappear. And he wants to help Linda come home. How rich? Derek asked, showing his first spark of interest in days. Helen smiled for the first time since she'd arrived. Rich enough that Marcus Volkov looks like a small-time thug by comparison. Vincent built a legitimate empire, tech companies, real estate, manufacturing. He's worth close to $500 million, and he's been using every penny trying to find his daughter. If this story is hitting you the way I think it will, you're going to want to subscribe because what happens next will completely change the game. The underdog was about to become the hunter. But here's the thing, Helen continued, Vincent can't make a move without Linda's cooperation. Volkov has been watching for any sign of the Matthews family reaching out to Linda. If Vincent tries to contact her directly, it puts her in immediate danger. So what are you suggesting? I asked. Helen's eyes gleamed with the look of someone who'd been planning this moment for months. We use the fact that Linda thinks you don't know who she really is. We use the fact that she's scared and alone and probably desperate. We create a situation where she has to come to us. She pulled out a final folder, thick with surveillance photos and detailed reports. Volkov isn't just looking for Linda. He's getting sloppy, desperate. The FBI has been building a case against him for years, but they've never had a witness willing to testify. Linda is the key to bringing down his entire operation. Derek sat up straighter. You want to use her as bait. I want to give her the choice, Helen corrected. Right now, Linda thinks she's powerless. She thinks she's protecting you by staying away. But what if she knew she had Vincent's resources behind her? What if she knew the FBI was ready to move, that she could finally stop running and start fighting back? The plan Helen outlined was audacious. We would let it leak through carefully placed sources that Margaret Thornfield was asking questions about her missing daughter-in-law. Not enough to put Linda in immediate danger, but enough to let her know we were looking for her. "She'll come back," Helen said with certainty. "Not because she wants to, but because she'll think you're in danger. That's who Linda is. She protects the people she loves, even if it destroys her." I looked at Derek, saw something returning to his eyes. Not happiness, that would take time. But purpose. Direction. Hope. "And when she comes back?" I asked. Helen's smile turned predatory. "When she comes back, we'll be ready for Volkov. Vincent has been building a case against him for 15 years, waiting for the right moment. The FBI has been chomping at the bit to take him down. And now we have something Volkov doesn't know about." "What?" "We have family. Real family. People who will fight for Linda not because they're paid to, but because they love her. That's something money can't buy, and it's something Marcus Volkov will never understand." As Helen packed up her files, I felt something I hadn't experienced since finding that wedding ring on my counter: hope. My daughter was out there, scared and alone, thinking she was protecting us by staying away. But she was wrong. For the first time in 34 years, I was going to fight for my child. And I wasn't going to lose her again. The plan Helen Santos laid out was brilliant in its simplicity. Over the next week, we would systematically leak information through channels we knew Marcus Volkov was monitoring. Not enough to immediately endanger Linda, but enough to make him think we were amateur hour, desperate family members stumbling around in the dark. What he wouldn't know is that every move was calculated by Vincent Matthews' security team, guided by FBI intelligence, and designed to draw both Linda and Volkov exactly where we wanted them. "The key," Helen explained as we sat in my living room surrounded by surveillance equipment that looked like something out of a spy movie, "is making Volkov believe he's smarter than us. Criminals like him can't resist easy targets." Derek had thrown himself into the plan with the intensity of a man who'd found his purpose again. "So we make ourselves look like easy targets." "Exactly." Helen pulled up surveillance footage on her laptop. "Vincent's people have been tracking Volkov's movements for months. He's gotten comfortable, sloppy. He thinks Linda is just some scared bookkeeper hiding in small-town America." I looked at baby Michael sleeping in his carrier, this innocent child caught in the middle of a web of lies and dangerous men. "And Linda? How do we know she'll come back?" Helen's smile was confident. "Because I know your daughter, Margaret. I've been studying her patterns for 2 years. Linda Matthews, Valerie Thornfield, whatever name she's using, she has one weakness that's been consistent through every identity." "What?" "She can't stay away when the people she loves are in danger." The first phase began Tuesday morning. Derek made a very public visit to the Akron Police Department, loudly demanding answers about his missing wife. He made sure to mention Valerie's mysterious phone calls, her paranoia, her fear of certain cars driving past the house. By Wednesday, I was visiting local hospitals, churches, and shelters, showing Valerie's picture and asking if anyone had seen my poor daughter-in-law who suffered from depression. I made sure to mention we lived alone with a newborn, that Derek worked long shifts at the steel plant. Thursday brought the first bite. Helen's surveillance team reported suspicious vehicles circling my neighborhood. A van with tinted windows parked across the street for 3 hours before leaving. Phone calls to my landline that hung up when I answered. "He's taking the bait," Helen said during our nightly briefing. "Volkov thinks you're fumbling around making noise, drawing attention to Linda's location. He's probably planning to shut you up before you can cause real problems." Friday evening, Derek came home from the plant with news that made my blood run cold. "There was a man asking questions about me at work," he said, still in his safety gear and hard hat. "Claimed to be from an insurance company, but the guy said he felt more like a cop. Or worse." Helen nodded grimly. "Vincent's people intercepted communications. Volkov's sending a team to Akron. They'll be here by Sunday." "And Linda?" "She's on her way too. One of Vincent's contacts spotted her in Pittsburgh yesterday, driving a stolen car and using cash. She knows you're in danger, and she's coming home." Sunday arrived gray and cold, with that particular February chill that cuts through your bones. I'd sent Derek and Michael to stay with my sister in Canton, officially for a family visit, actually to keep them safe while the real game played out. Helen had transformed my house into a fortress disguised as a trap. Cameras in every room, FBI agents posing as neighbors, enough firepower to stop a small army. But to anyone watching from the outside, it looked like a scared old woman home alone, waiting for news of her missing daughter-in-law. At 3 p.m., a familiar sedan pulled into my driveway. My heart stopped as I watched Linda, my daughter, climb out of the car. She looked exhausted, thin, her auburn hair dyed black and chopped short. But even from a distance, even after 8 years of lies, I could see something I'd missed before. She had her grandfather's eyes. My father's eyes. Linda approached the house cautiously, checking over her shoulder every few steps. She was carrying a gun. When I opened the front door, we stared at each other for a long moment. She looked like she wanted to run, to disappear again. But love and fear held her in place. "Margaret," she said quietly, "you need to leave. Now. Pack a bag and get out of Akron. Don't tell anyone where you're going." "Come inside, sweetheart," I said, using the endearment that had come so naturally for 8 years, that meant so much more now. "We need to talk." "There's no time." "They're coming." "I know." I stepped aside, gesturing her into the house. "That's exactly what we're counting on." Linda's eyes went wide as she stepped into my living room and saw Helen Santos sitting calmly with a cup of coffee, FBI badges prominently displayed on the coffee table. "Hello, Linda," Helen said. "Your father sent me." The gun in Linda's hand wavered. "Vincent? How did you?" "We've been looking for you for 2 years," I said gently. "Not to hurt you, honey. To help you come home." The next hour was a whirlwind of revelations, confessions, and tears. Linda confirmed what we'd suspected. She hadn't known who I was when she first arrived in Akron. It had taken her over a year to piece together the connection, and by then she was already in love with Derek, already part of our family. "I tried to leave," she said, tears streaming down her face. "A dozen times, I tried. But Derek was so happy, and you were so kind to me, and for the first time in my life I felt like I belonged somewhere." "You do belong here," I said firmly. "You're my daughter. This is your home. I married my half-brother, Margaret. I had a baby with." "You didn't know," Helen interrupted. You were two scared kids who found love in an impossible situation. Vincent wants you to know that none of this changes how much he loves you or how proud he is of the woman you became. Linda was about to respond when Helen's radio crackled to life. We have movement, came the voice of Agent Torres from his position across the street. 3 vehicles approaching from the north. This is it. Helen stood, checking her weapon. Linda, I need you to listen carefully. Marcus Volkov is about to walk into this house thinking he's got 3 helpless women cornered. What he doesn't know is that this house is surrounded by FBI agents, and Vincent Matthews has spent 15 years building a legal case that will bury him forever. You want me to testify, Linda said, understanding dawning in her eyes. I want you to choose, Helen corrected. You can run again, keep living in fear, keep looking over your shoulder for the rest of your life. Or you can stay and fight back. With your family. With Vincent's resources. With the full power of the federal government behind you. The front door exploded inward. 3 men in dark clothes burst through, guns drawn, moving with military precision. The leader was tall, lean, with the kind of face that had seen too much violence. Ladies, he said in a voice like gravel, nobody needs to get hurt here. We just want the woman who's been causing so much trouble. Helen raised her hands slowly. I don't know what you're talking about. The man's smile was cold. Valerie Martinez. Also known as Linda Matthews. Also known as the little bird who's been singing songs she shouldn't know. Linda stepped forward, and I saw something change in her posture. The scared, running woman was gone. In her place stood someone harder, stronger. You must be Marcus, she said calmly. I've heard so much about you. Volkov's eyes narrowed. You've caused me a lot of trouble, sweetheart. Cost me money, time, resources. But that's all over now. You're right, Linda said, and I heard something in her voice that made my heart swell with pride. It is over. That's when the lights went out and all hell broke loose. Helen had triggered the signal, and suddenly my quiet living room became a war zone. FBI agents poured through every door and window. Flashbangs exploded, filling the room with strobing light and deafening noise. In the chaos, I saw Linda tackle one of Volkov's men, wrestling his gun away with moves I didn't know she possessed. Helen had the second man on the ground, FBI training on full display. But Volkov was gone. When the smoke cleared and the lights came back on, we'd captured 2 of his men, but Marcus Volkov had vanished like smoke. Where is he? Helen barked into her radio. Unknown, came Agent Torres's voice, tight with frustration. He slipped out during the chaos. We're searching the neighborhood, but... Linda's phone rang. She looked at the caller ID, her face going pale. It's him. Helen nodded grimly. Answer it. Speakerphone. Hello, Linda, came Volkov's smooth voice. Impressive show. Very dramatic. But I'm afraid you made one tiny miscalculation. What's that? Linda asked, though I could hear the fear creeping back into her voice. You assumed I didn't know about your real family. About Derek. About little baby Michael. My blood turned to ice. Right now, Volkov continued pleasantly, my associates are having a very interesting conversation with your husband and son at 247 Maple Street in Canton. Beautiful house. Your sister has excellent taste in curtains. Linda's knees buckled. Helen caught her, but I could see the defeat washing over my daughter's face. Here's how this is going to work, Volkov said. You're going to walk out of that house alone. No FBI, no weapons, no backup. You're going to meet me at the old Riverside steel plant on Route 8. You know, the one where your dear husband used to work before he started playing house with his sister. The line went dead. Linda looked at me with eyes full of despair. He has them, Margaret. He has Derek and Michael. That's when I realized something that would change everything. Marcus Volkov had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He'd threatened my family. Both of my children. My grandson. And he had no idea what he'd just awakened. The drive to Riverside Steel Plant felt like traveling through a nightmare. Linda sat beside me in the passenger seat, her face pale as death, while Helen coordinated with FBI units through her headset. Every word from the radio made our situation sound more hopeless. No visual on the targets at the Canton address, Agent Torres reported. House appears empty. No signs of struggle, but they're definitely gone. Linda's hands shook as she checked her gun for the 100th time. This is exactly what I was afraid of, she whispered. Everyone I love gets hurt because of me. Stop, I said firmly, surprising myself with the steel in my voice. This isn't because of you, honey. This is because of a monster who thinks he can terrorize innocent people. But he picked the wrong family to threaten. Helen looked up from her equipment. Margaret, I need you to understand something. This could go very badly. Volkov isn't just desperate, he's cornered. Vincent's legal team has frozen his assets, the FBI has warrants for his entire organization, and Linda's testimony could put him away forever. He has nothing left to lose. Then that makes two of us, I said quietly. As we approached the abandoned steel plant, the same facility where Derek had worked before the layoffs, where he'd first told me about falling in love with a mysterious girl named Valerie, I felt something shifting inside me. For 34 years, I'd carried the guilt of giving up my daughter. For 8 years, I'd lived with her unknowingly under my roof, missing the chance to be her mother. For 3 weeks, I'd watched my family fall apart while dangerous men hunted the child I'd failed to protect. Enough was enough. The steel plant loomed against the gray February sky like a monument to better times. Broken windows reflected the dying light, and rust streaked down the walls like tears. This place had once represented hope, honest work, the American dream. Now it felt like a graveyard. There, Helen pointed to a black SUV parked near the main entrance. That's Volkov's vehicle. Linda's phone buzzed with a text message, "Come alone. Any tricks and your family dies. You have 5 minutes." I'm going with you, I announced, already opening my car door. Margaret, no. Linda. I turned to face my daughter, this brave woman who'd been running and fighting and surviving for 15 years. You've been alone long enough. I failed you once. I'm not failing you again. Helen grabbed my arm. This isn't the plan. If something goes wrong, at least my daughter won't face it alone. We walked toward that steel plant together, mother and daughter, separated by decades of loss but united by love. The massive doors hung open like a mouth waiting to swallow us whole. Inside, the plant was a maze of shadows and rusted machinery. Our footsteps echoed off the concrete floors as we made our way deeper into the complex. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear voices, men talking in low, urgent tones. "This way," Linda whispered, leading us toward what used to be the main production floor. That's where we found them. Derek and baby Michael sat in the center of the vast space, my son tied to a chair while he cradled his sleeping child. Two armed men flanked them, and standing behind them like a predator surveying his prey was Markus Volkov. He was older than I'd expected, maybe 60, with silver hair and expensive clothes that looked out of place in the industrial wasteland. But his eyes were young and cruel and absolutely without mercy. "Ah, the family reunion," he said, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. "How touching. 3 generations of stupidity, all in one place." "Let them go," Linda said, her voice steady despite the gun trained on her. "You have me now. That's what you wanted." Volkov laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "What I wanted, sweetheart, was for you to disappear 15 years ago. To take what you'd seen and bury it so deep it never saw daylight. Instead, you've cost me everything." He gestured to his men, and they raised their weapons. Derek struggled against his bonds, trying to shield Michael with his body. "Here's what's going to happen," Volkov continued. "You're all going to have a tragic accident. Gas leak, maybe. Old building like this, accidents happen all the time. By the time anyone finds you, there won't be enough left to ask uncomfortable questions." That's when I heard it, a sound so faint I almost missed it. The soft rumble of vehicles approaching, getting closer. Volkov heard it too. His head snapped toward the entrance, and for the first time, I saw uncertainty flicker across his face. "Sir," one of his men said urgently into his radio, "we've got company. Multiple vehicles, coming fast." Helen's voice crackled from somewhere in the shadows, "FBI. Building is surrounded." Chaos erupted. Volkov's men spun toward the voices, trying to locate the threat. In that moment of confusion, Derek somehow broke free from his restraints. Later I'd learn he'd been working on the ropes the entire time, waiting for his chance. But as my son lunged toward Volkov, baby Michael started crying, that piercing wail that cuts straight through your heart and demands immediate attention. Volkov's gun swung toward the baby. Time slowed to a crawl. I saw Linda diving forward, her own weapon drawn. I saw Derek's face, twisted with desperate love and terror. I saw Markus Volkov's finger tighten on the trigger. And I saw something else, a figure emerging from the shadows behind Volkov, moving with deadly purpose. The shot rang out. But it wasn't Volkov who fired. The man who'd spent 15 years hunting my daughter, who'd terrorized our family and threatened an innocent baby, crumpled to the ground with a neat hole in his chest. Standing behind him, smoking pistol in hand, was a man I'd never seen before but somehow recognized immediately. He was tall, distinguished, with silver hair and Linda's green eyes. Vincent Matthews. "Nobody," he said in a voice like thunder, "threatens my grandchild." The next few minutes were a blur of activity. FBI agents swarmed the building, securing the scene and taking Volkov's surviving men into custody. Paramedics checked Derek and baby Michael, both miraculously unharmed. But my focus was on Linda, who was staring at Vincent Matthews with tears streaming down her face. "Dad," she whispered. Vincent holstered his weapon, and yes, I learned later he had carry permits in all 50 states and the training to use them, before pulling his daughter into his arms. I'm sorry I'm late, sweetheart, he said gently. But I promised I'd always protect you, didn't I? Helen appeared beside me, looking shaken but relieved. Vincent flew in this morning when we lost radio contact. He wasn't supposed to be here, but I don't take chances with my family, Vincent finished. I've spent 15 years building the resources to end this nightmare. I wasn't going to let some two-bit criminal finish what he started. Derek approached slowly, still holding Michael, his eyes wide with shock. You're Linda's father? I am, Vincent said. And you're the young man who's been taking care of my daughter all these years. They stared at each other, this billionaire industrialist and my steel worker son, two men who loved the same woman for very different reasons. Thank you, Vincent said simply. For loving her. For giving her a home. For making her feel safe when I couldn't. Derek's voice cracked. She's amazing. Even with all this, even knowing. I still love her. Vincent smiled, and I saw where Linda had gotten her warmth. Good. Because she's going to need that in the days ahead. We all are. As FBI agents led away the last of Volkov's men, I realized something profound had just happened. Not just the capture of a dangerous criminal, but the reunion of a family that had been broken by fear and circumstance and 34 years of separation. Linda walked over to me, her face streaked with tears but somehow lighter than I'd seen it since the day she left my house. Margaret, she said quietly, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have said years ago. I took her hands in mine. What is it, sweetheart? When I figured out who you were, when I realized you were my birth mother. She took a shaky breath. I wasn't angry. I was grateful. Because even though you couldn't raise me, you'd given me Derek. You'd given me a home. You'd given me the chance to fall in love with my family twice. The tears came then, for both of us. 34 years of loss and regret and what might have been, washing away in the acknowledgement of what actually was love. Complicated, messy, impossible love, but love nonetheless. Vincent approached us, baby Michael now sleeping peacefully in his arms. If I may, he said, I think it's time we all went home. Together. But even as relief flooded through me, I knew our story wasn't over. Because outside the steel plant, media vans were already gathering. Word was spreading about the dramatic capture of Marcus Volkov, about the FBI operation, about the family at the center of it all. And tomorrow, we'd have to figure out how to rebuild our lives in the aftermath of the most complicated love story in history. But for the first time in months, I wasn't afraid of tomorrow. Because finally, my family was whole. Beautiful souls, we're in the home stretch now. If you're feeling the emotional weight of this journey, wait until you see how this impossible family finds their way to happiness. The next phase is going to give you the resolution and justice you've been waiting for. Drop a heart in the comments if you're ready for the triumphant ending. 6 months later, I'm sitting in the garden behind Vincent Matthews' estate in Columbus, watching my grandson take his first wobbly steps across the perfectly manicured lawn. The same child who was at the center of an impossible situation is now the light that guides our reconstructed family forward. Michael Derek Thornfield Matthews, yes, we gave him both names, doesn't know that his family tree looks like something out of a soap opera. All he knows is that he's surrounded by people who love him fiercely and unconditionally. And that's exactly how it should be. The months following that night at the steel plant were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, media attention, and the slow, delicate work of rebuilding trust. The story broke nationwide. Billionaire's daughter brings down crime empire, family reunion ends 15-year manhunt, love conquers all in most complicated love story ever. But behind the headlines was the real work of healing. Derek struggled the most at first. The revelation that his wife was his half-sister, that their child was both his son and his nephew, shook him to his core. For weeks, he'd barely speak to Linda, barely hold Michael, consumed by shame and confusion about what their relationship meant. It was Vincent who finally got through to him. "Son," he said one evening as we all sat in his library, this room filled with leather-bound books and the smell of expensive cigars, "let me tell you something I learned the hard way. Love doesn't follow convenient rules. It doesn't check family trees or worry about what other people think. You loved Linda when you thought she was a stranger. You loved her when you found out she was lying about her past. Are you really going to stop loving her now that you know why she was lying?" Derek looked up from the whiskey he'd been nursing. "It's not that simple. Isn't it?" Vincent poured himself a drink, his movements careful and measured. "You fell in love with a woman who was brave enough to run from criminals, strong enough to start over with nothing, and loving enough to build a family with you even when she knew it was complicated. That woman is sitting upstairs right now, afraid you'll never forgive her for a situation neither of you created." That night, I watched my son climb the stairs to the room where Linda had been staying since we moved to Vincent's estate. I heard their voices, talking, crying, arguing, and finally laughing. When they came down for breakfast the next morning, they were holding hands. "We've decided," Linda announced, her voice stronger than I'd heard it in months, "that we're going to make this work. However unconventional our family is, it's our family. And we're not going to let anyone else's judgment destroy what we've built." Derek nodded, his arm around his wife, because that's what she was, complicated or not. "We've been through too much to give up now." Vincent smiled, and I saw where Linda had gotten her determination. "Good. Because I have some ideas about how we move forward." Those ideas, it turned out, were transformative. Vincent Matthews hadn't just been playing defense for 15 years, he'd been planning offense. The legal case against Marcus Volkov's organization was airtight, built on evidence Vincent's investigators had been gathering for over a decade. Within 3 months, over 40 people were indicted on charges ranging from money laundering to murder. Volkov himself survived the gunshot wound but was looking at life in prison without parole. "Justice served," Helen Santos said during one of our regular dinners at the estate. "She'd become more than our investigator, she was family now, the aunt Michael would never know he'd needed." But Vincent's real vision was bigger than revenge. "Linda," he said one evening as we all watched Michael play with blocks on the Persian rug, "I want to start a foundation. The Linda Matthews Foundation for Missing Persons and Family Reunification." Linda looked up sharply. "Dad, I don't need." "It's not about what you need," Vincent interrupted gently. "It's about what other families need. Every year, thousands of people disappear, witnesses in protection, victims of trafficking, children who age out of foster care, families torn apart by violence or circumstance. We have the resources now, the connections, the expertise. We can help them find each other." I felt something shift in my chest, a warmth spreading through me as I realized what Vincent was really saying. "You want to turn our pain into purpose," I said. "Exactly." Vincent's eyes lit up. "Margaret, you spent 34 years missing your daughter. Linda spent the same years looking for a family. Derek thought he'd lost his wife and child. All of that heartbreak, all of those resources we used to find each other, imagine if we could use that to help other families reunite. Within a month, the Linda Matthews Foundation was operational. Vincent hired the best investigators, social workers, and legal experts money could buy. Linda became the public face of the foundation, sharing her story to give hope to other families separated by violence or circumstance. Derek surprised everyone, including himself, by becoming one of the foundation's most effective advocates. His story, the working man who'd unknowingly married his half-sister and chose love over convention, resonated with people in ways none of us expected. "I get calls from families all over the country," he told me one afternoon as we watched Linda being interviewed on a major morning show. Single parents, adoptees looking for birth families, people whose relatives vanished without a trace. They just want to know someone understands what it's like to have your family torn apart and put back together in ways that don't make sense to anyone else. The foundation's first success came just 2 months after launching. A teenage girl who'd been trafficked across state lines was reunited with her grandmother after Vincent's team traced leads the police had given up on. The photo of their reunion, this elderly woman clutching her granddaughter, both of them crying, became the foundation's mission statement made visible. More successes followed. A foster child who'd aged out of the system found his biological siblings. A witness protection family was safely relocated and reunited after testifying against their abusers. Twin sisters separated at birth found each other after 40 years. Each reunion felt like a small victory against the chaos that had once threatened to destroy our own family. But the real transformation was happening at home. Derek and Linda renewed their wedding vows 6 months after that night at the steel plant. Not because they had to, not because anyone expected them to, but because they wanted to. The ceremony was small, just family and close friends, but it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever witnessed. "I promise to love you," Linda said, tears streaming down her face as she looked at Derek, not despite our complicated story, but because of it. "You gave me a family when I didn't even know what family meant. You gave me a home when I was running from everything. You gave me a love that was strong enough to survive impossible revelations." Derek's voice was steady as he replied, "I promise to love you for exactly who you are, my wife, my partner, the mother of our son, and yes, my sister in all the ways that matter. Our story might not be conventional, but it's ours, and I wouldn't change a single chapter." Michael took his first steps that day, toddling across the garden toward his parents with absolute confidence that they would catch him. They did. As I write this now, watching my impossible family thrive in ways I never dreamed possible, I think about that morning when I found Valerie's wedding ring on my kitchen counter. I was a broken woman then, overwhelmed by loss and betrayal and the collapse of everything I thought I understood. But that woman was wrong about so many things. She thought her family was destroyed. Actually, it was just getting started. She thought love had to follow conventional rules. Actually, the strongest love transcends every boundary. She thought the pain of giving up her daughter 34 years ago was unforgivable. Actually, it led to the most beautiful love story I've ever been part of. The Linda Matthews Foundation has now helped reunite over 300 families. Vincent's resources, combined with Linda's determination and Derek's heart, have created something genuinely transformative. Last month, we opened our 5th regional office. But our greatest success story is still the one that started it all: a billionaire's lost daughter, a steel worker's impossible love, and a grandmother who finally learned that family isn't defined by conventional rules. It's defined by who shows up, who stays, and who chooses love even when it's complicated. Michael is running now, chasing butterflies across Vincent's garden while his parents watch with the kind of joy that can only come from surviving the impossible. Linda catches my eye and smiles, that mysterious smile I once thought never reached her eyes, but now I understand was just her way of protecting the love she'd found. Derek waves from where he's setting up a picnic blanket, this man who's discovered that being a father, a husband, and a brother to the same person isn't a tragedy, it's just a different kind of blessing. And Vincent is teaching his grandson to throw a baseball, making up for 15 years of missed moments with his daughter by being the most devoted grandfather imaginable. This is what redemption looks like. This is what justice feels like. This is what happens when love refuses to be limited by what other people think is possible. Thank you, beautiful souls, for taking this incredible journey with me. If this story moved you, if it gave you hope that broken families can heal and complicated love can triumph, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what part touched your heart the most. Because sometimes the most beautiful families are the ones that have to be rebuilt from impossible pieces. And sometimes, the love that saves us is the love we never saw coming. And that's our complete story, beautiful souls. A journey from devastation to triumph, from secrets to truth, from broken family to unbreakable love. Drop a comment telling me which moment made you cry, which twist shocked you most, and whether you believe love really can conquer impossible odds. Your engagement means everything. It's what makes these stories come alive and reach the families who need to hear them most.